All right, hey everybody, welcome to RI Amateur Series Episode 4, presented by GolfNewsRI. The previous 3 episodes, we featured Jamie Lukowitz, Jay Barrow, and Bobby Leopold was most recently. And today we are excited to feature Brad Valois, another player who's pretty much done everything there is to do in the game of amateur golf, short of winning a U.S. Amateur, but he's been in contention. So Brad, thanks so much for taking some time and coming on with us.
Joe, thanks again for having me. I look forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely. I'm super excited about it. Obviously, we're trying to get some of the bigger hitters, and you're obviously one of them. You have four RI amateur titles. You just went through your resume before we went on live, and you've pretty much done everything there is to do, similar to Bobby Leopold. So I ask you the same thing. What is it that keeps you going? Obviously, the winning is the easy answer, but what is it that keeps you going and keep coming back for more in the amateur game?
I think we're all competitive kind of guys here in the RIGA, especially. And then, growing up playing sports your whole life, it's tough to kind of let that part go. So golf's the one way for us to stay competitive without having to worry about too much, contact or, overactivity when a lot of us have to go to work the next day, right?
Absolutely. You can play golf till whenever, which is a nice thing. You can't do that for hockey or basketball, or certainly not football.
That's right.
So you have 4 RI amateur titles, looking for 5. Is there, when you look back on those, is there one that stands out more than the others? Is there one that's more memorable than the others? Obviously, they're all victories, but is there one that sticks out?
I have to say my first one I played against. So it's oddly enough, my first junior that I won, I played against a good friend of mine to this day, Dave Marino. And I had shot my career best round when I played against Dave as a junior at Wannamoisett. I'd shot even par, like my second or third year ever playing golf from the tips at Wannamoisett, and I was thrilled. And the years went by. I grew up playing junior golf with Dave, and then my first state amateur final was at Rhode Island versus Dave Marino again. And at this point, we were good friends and both in college. He went to Ole Miss, so it was a great match. We played it. We went back and forth. We had a great time. And that's probably one of the best match plays I've ever had in terms of going against a good buddy, someone else who's super competitive. It was fun. That was probably my favorite by far.
Awesome. Now, you had a relatively high finish at the state four ball a couple weeks ago or so. So I know you're actually at Kirkbride right now practicing. We could have done it in person, but either way, talk about the state of your game right now. How are you feeling about it? What are you working on, and what's your preparation like for the amateur in a couple of weeks?
I'm still out here trying to find it, like I imagine most people are. I've been in this incredible slump, I would say, for the last 6 years or so. Last time I think I won anything was about 2015, I believe, maybe 16. That was right around the time I had my last season of full schedule, where I played in all the USGAs. I played in all the big time national amateur events, and I played in all the state stuff. So ever kind of since then, I kind of took a step back for a year or two. But ever since then, I've been struggling. I haven't really placed too much in any of the events, and I'm just trying to hit balls again, get back out there and just see what happens now that I'm here at Kirkbride, who has a great practice facility, but just trying to find it. And hopefully I do. I got another month the way I view it. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully I can find something.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think of Kirkbride as a course, and how do you think it's going to play for the amateur? Because there's been different thoughts about it. And I was talking to Jay Barrow, and he was saying that when he was a member of Metacomet, rest in peace Metacomet, yep. He was a member of Metacomet, and he played the amateur there. He said it was completely different. Like the pin placements were completely different.
Yeah,
like member pin placements that you would normally see on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever day.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that as it relates to Kirkbride?
I've only been here for a couple months now, so I'm not completely, in tune with all the different stuff that they have going on in terms of course setup. But I ran into the RJ guys the other day. We, sparked up a conversation, and they had said that there's about 12 hole locations per green that they have for options. So what that means to me, I have no idea, because I've never seen most of them. But with what I've seen so far with the course, we did the 18th green, right? They redid, what was it? The 10th hole, right? They moved all those bunkers short of the green and moved them over to the left. And, now they took down the bushes, so anybody can go for the green at any skill set. So that's going to be some fireworks from that hole, right? I imagine everyone thinking they're going to make a birdie, but I don't think it's going to work out that way because it's got a really challenging green, and the hole locations on that hole, I imagine, could get diabolical. And then new greens on 8, right? I think that's going to make some changes for a lot of the hole locations there. There's no telling where those could be. With that false front there, I mean, it could be some fireworks if they put some front pins on a long par 4 like that. 7, a lot of the guys who are going to be playing, I've already seen that. And the second tee box, I guess, that's going to be a tough driving hole. It looks easy, but I think it could create some problems for some people. So in terms of the greens, a lot of the holes are going to be short where players are going to be hitting wedges in, but I think, it's tough to get them close because the greens are so undulated and treacherous. So it's going to favor a lot of risk reward. So we'll see what happens in the match play. I think it'll create a lot of drama.
Absolutely, it should be really interesting. I can't wait to see what they do with the pin placements. As a member and someone that plays a lot, and I stink, so I'm not good by any stretch, but I like to play and compete at the level I can. I'm interested to see what pin placements look like.
One of the rumors is they might put the tee where the women's tee is on 2 and make that hole drivable.
Yeah, they could.
So
they could do that. They also have that new tee box. I think you might be talking about the tee box on 6 that they pushed way back.
Oh yeah, they put a new tee box back on 6. So
car path. That's a real power 5 from there. But they were talking about somebody was saying, because I was there on Saturday. I was there on Saturday, and somebody was saying that they might make that the second tee box and like you said, make it drivable.
That's what it was. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
that'd be interesting because 2 is tough because the whole fairway slopes to the left.
Yeah.
If you go far enough left and put it over the trees, the shot from the shot in from the third tee box is actually quite interesting.
That's the best place to hit it from. Third tee box, right?
It might be. So you're lucky enough to get through those trees.
And then that's a long drive because the par 5s, they look short in the scorecard, but into the prevailing wind, they play a whole heck of a lot longer. And that 6 hole specifically with that tough green and that uphill shot to the fairway, you got to hit a really good drive to carry the hill to try to get some distance on your tee ball. But I have no idea how this is going to play. And if they get the greens nice, right, I've never seen a golf course, kind of in this good condition this early on. So if it stays like this the rest of the summer and they can get the greens a little firm, a little bit faster, I can only imagine what it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, they do a great job there of keeping the course in good shape. And like you said, the practice facilities are great. When you have so much experience, you've done so much. When you go into these tournaments, do you still get nervous? Do you still get butterflies before you tee off, or are you kind of over that?
That's a great question. I think to get butterflies and get nervous, you got to have some sort of confidence. Unfortunately for me, I haven't had much confidence the last 5 or 6 years, given the state of my game. But I'm more nervous about, not performing well at all, as opposed to winning or doing anything like that. But if I can figure out a better game plan, I guess, going in, hopefully I can get some nerves. But it's been a long time since I felt it, that's for sure. So who knows?
Interesting. The amateur, as obviously and everyone knows, is the first 2 days of stroke play, the rest of it match play, like you referenced. And there's different thoughts on the stroke play portion. But how important is that to you? To one, like you mentioned, to get your confidence up, but 2, obviously, it's about seeding. And how much stock do you put into the stroke play? And then second part is, what's that flip like from stroke play to match play? How do you flip the switch?
For me, I would say that for some reason, I always used to use, all those years ago, I used to use the stroke play portion as like a warm-up session where you never got aggressive, you never started firing up flags, right? You never tried to do anything crazy. You kind of just tried to go hum. And then usually over the course of those 2 days at a tough golf course, usually it would work out okay. And then when you get to match play, that's when you start to become a little bit more aggressive in order to, beat the opponents that you have because you're playing the better players of that week. And then with match play, you're always going to have 1 or 2 hard matches, no matter what, whether it's at the beginning of the week or at the end of the week, it's coming. right? You're always going to face off a high seed, someone who's playing well that week. So there's no running from it. So it's just a matter, it's when it happens. So it's either in the morning 18 or the afternoon 18, and some of that, kind of depends on, timing, which that's what match play kind of is. It's a little bit of timing, unfortunately, but no matter what, it's coming. So you just got to be ready for it at all times.
And this is something I struggle with when I play match play. Again, I stink. I'm like a 15 handicap, but I like to compete. But when you're playing a match, how much of it is playing your own game? Then how much of it is playing your opponent? How much is there a balance?
Another great question, because for years growing up, especially, I never won a stroke play event until I won many of the match play events, and I could only win match play events, it seemed like, and couldn't figure out why. And then as I got a little bit older, now I can't win a match play event. I can only win a stroke play event. Can't figure out why. But I would have to guess, if I did, I would guess that it would, in match play, when I did well, you never played against your opponent. You always played against yourself. So you still had to break par every single match in order to have a chance to win at the very least, right? So it didn't matter who you're playing or what the day was, morning or afternoon 18, you still needed to beat your own personal best, which mine always was par better. If I can shoot par better every day, you got a chance to win. And then with stroke play, it's different because every shot kind of matters, right? You got to decide whether or not to be aggressive, not be aggressive, and then you're playing the whole field versus just yourself. So with match play, when I feel like I did well, it was always just playing myself. I didn't care who I played. I didn't care if they were on top of the game or they were struggling or what seed they were. I knew that I needed to shoot my square, that 18, and I had to figure out a game plan on how to do it. I never just played my opponent. I guess that was a big difference for me, which hopefully I can bring some of that back next month.
Hopefully you have a chance. You're still a great player, even though you say you have no confidence. But that flips quickly for you guys at your level. For me, not so much. But for you guys, these things flip on a daily basis. So
yeah, the fun thing about golf, I guess, what keeps us coming back is you never know. All it takes is finding something on the range one day, and then it can take you somewhere. You never know.
Absolutely. Or you make a birdie on the last hole, and then after a terrible day, you make a birdie on the last hole, and then I want to keep.
That's right. Never out until you're out, right?
Something like that. When you watch these kids play today, whether college stars or younger players in the game, even growing kids coming out from high school. I just covered the high school state championship a couple of weeks ago, or whatever it was. Max Jackson at LaSalle, he's like 15 years old. He shot under par for the tournament, ran away with it. He's actually playing in the amateur because he won the individual state championship. But he's supposed to be like the next guy in Rhode Island golf. He's that good. People say he's gonna be that good. What do you see these kids coming up, whether it's him or Davis Chatfield or Patrick Welch over at Oklahoma, and you watch them play or you compete against them or whatever it might be. What do you see in their games? What is it that makes them great at such a young age?
That's a good question. You have to be competitive, I feel like, to play a sport in general and then golf specifically. Golf's a lot of the times you don't want to go out and practice or you don't want to stay late at night to go do that stuff. And that's what you need to do in order to, perform well. So it starts as a kid when you have the time and you have the motivation, and it kind of gets harder and harder as you grow older, but you need to be competitive. That's first and foremost. And Pat Welch seems to have that. He certainly has that. I haven't met Max yet. Hopefully I can meet him when he comes here next month, or maybe I can meet him before that. But I would say that's something that he would need to have in order to keep that going. And then Rhode Island in general has always had some amazing golfers come through it. I think per capita, Rhode Island's the best, or has the most successful golfers out of all the states. So I grew up playing against Dave Marino, who went to Ole Miss, and that was huge, right, for me and my ability to come up a little bit through the ranks of that. And then I also had John Curran, who was on tour, and Jim Renner, who was on tour. So that's just as important as it is to, be a kid and have that competition. But, with Bobby, with Tyler Cook now, we always had Charlie Blanchard before. You had me. If you have a good core group of guys that can always push each other, that's a big part of it. And not every state has that, because some of these states are so big that you can't just call up, these guys and go out and play.
Right.
It's tough. You might not every club that you're a member at has, golfers that are good enough to push you. But luckily for Rhode Island, we've always had that. So I would say that's one thing that makes a difference, I think, for Rhode Island, especially being a small state. I think that's helpful because if you look at the USGA state team results, like for a decade, Rhode Island was always in the top 5 out of the whole country, which you would not think at all from being a small state and being a cold weather state, but they've always held their own.
Absolutely. One other thing, so 2 other questions, then I'll get you out of here. I know you have balls to hit and practice to get done. With the amateur game, the last couple of interviews I had with people, it's been fascinating talking about, these kids that aren't coming back to play in the RA amateur because of their world golf ranking points, and the RA amateur doesn't get a lot of credit for as far as points go. I think it was Bobby Leopold was telling me that they actually lose points even if they win the RA amateur because of their world golf ranking, and that impacts the US amateur and all these different things.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that. Right. So I did this growing up. I played obviously junior golf, I played college golf, and I played amateur golf. So I was top 100 as both a college player and then also again as a mid amateur. Right. So it's almost impossible to be a mid amateur and get a high world golf ranking. It's almost impossible because you're playing a 2 months, especially from a cold weather state.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't really happen. And then for it to happen, I mean, you got to go on a run. Like you have to have a run for the summer. That's just very, very hard to do. When I did it, I won the state amateur. I think I came in second in the New England amateur. I topped 20 in the Northeast amateur. I topped 20 in the Sunny-Hannah amateur, the Porter Cup. I made match play at the US amateur. I was medalist at the US mid amateur. And that's what it all took for one summer, right? So I don't buy it in the sense that skipping the Rhode Island amateur and 50th in some other big amateur halfway around the country is worth it. I don't think that's because you still have to win the Rhode Island amateur, which gives you the same. It's last time I checked, it was like a C or D rated field.
Mm-hmm.
The US mid amateur is a C rated field, right? So if you come in if you top 25 for the Northeast, which is an elite level field, or medalist and make it to the finals in the US mid amateur, you get more points for top 25 for the Northeast. Well, that's great and everything, but you still have to top 25 in the Northeast, which is a 4-day event. You got to go out there. Not everyone's from Rhode Island, so it's not easy for everybody, but it's not that big of a deal. I really don't think, because you're going to have to, just like professional golf, you get one chance to say play in the Northeast if you win the state stroke play or you're a player of the year of some sort, but you got to do good in that one event that you get at the Northeast to get the invite to the next 2 or 3 events. And then you got to place in those, and then you got to qualify for the others. So with the state of the game with mid amateurs specifically, I don't think it matters where the Rhode Island amateurs is bad to play in, right? Because you still got to win that, right? That's still something that you put on your resume to get into these events. So I guess I don't buy that. But in terms of, I guess the one thing I would notice the big difference is playing against the kids so much in that Northeast amateur, which we've been doing for so long, is how far they're hitting it. Like they're making these golf courses obsolete. And for the mid amateurs like us, like it's just not easy to compete with. It really isn't. I mean, if I hit the ball 300 yards off a tee, I'm getting out driven by some of these kids by 50, 60, 70 yards, like regularly. And it's just crazy. And it's not something that we could ever kind of keep up with over time. So it's Rhode Island golf. We don't mind it, but once you play the bigger events, these kids are just crazy long, much longer than they ever were when we were in college. And it's making these golf courses just kind of obsolete.
So you think there's a distance problem in the amateur game? There's been a big conversation on the PGA Tour, as you probably know, about rolling back equipment and all these other different things. And so you're thinking that it could be a similar issue.
Well, the college kids, I mean, anybody these kids are hitting the ball 350, 360 regularly, right? And they're hitting wedges 160 yards now. And they're doing full swings, and it's just crazy, crazy stuff. And it's just, I don't ever remember playing like that before. Like I used to be, or think I was longer, hitting the ball 280, 290 with the old drivers. But some of these kids are just absolutely just nuts.
Oh, I mean, it's totally crazy. I agree. I mean, I'm not sure what they would do about it in the amateur game. I know there's talk about it on the PGA Tour, but it is crazy. It's fun to watch if you're a fan, and it's fun to write about. But when it comes to
How much farther can you make the golf courses? You don't, I mean,
Right.
you can't redesign all these golf courses and put all these millions of dollars into every single course to make it more playable. That's not really what it's all about. Some of these courses have been around for 100 years. Like, what are you going to do? You can't be the driver 360, 370, and hitting a pitching wedge from 160. I mean, there's no golf hole out there that'll work for that.
Right. I mean, one solution could be, and it's been suggested they do it at Augusta, is to put more trees in. And obviously, trees take time to grow. I understand that, but put more trees in strategic places, and bunkers don't really affect anybody because no one's worried about. I mean, I'm worried about going into bunkers, but you guys,
I am.
You guys
I certainly
don't.
am. I certainly am.
Most of these kids aren't. It's just another shot.
Yeah.
Put trees in different strategic places to make them have to hit, different shots to have fade it, whatever.
Well, all these golf courses are taking them all down.
That too.
Why? But make the traffic, I guess they say, but I mean, there's no harder obstacle out there than a tree right in the middle of your way, right? So I don't know why they're all taking them down, but like Moisa specifically took some out on the 11th hole, I heard. And now they're worried about some of the kids, breaking 60, which the course rating there is a 74 point something for a par 69. So if you're a 0 handicap and you play to your handicap, you should be shooting 74. And these kids and these college kids are breaking 60. Like, that's nuts,
Yeah, they'll break 60. Well, I don't know if they'll break 60. They'll come close next week next week's the Northeast Amateur. I'm sure obviously those kids will. I don't know if they'll break 60, but I think somebody could challenge it with how far they hit the ball, and I'm sure the greens will be very fast.
Oh yeah.
Hamilton says later
I had dinner one time, a long time ago, with the Clemson coach, and he was describing his college and like what they have for the kids there. And they asked me what I thought of Patrick at the time because he was there to recruit Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically said that for his program, they have, 2 sports psychologists on staff, their own private driving range, right, with their own private instructor. And then the role of the assistant coaches and people that support the program is they go with the player to their private coach's instruction, right? So they can help work with the kids, throughout the season. And then they got their own golf courses, they got their own weight staff, their own weight team. And you're realizing now that you can't really compete at the amateur level without that now because so many kids have access to it, just like how Tiger changed the game, right? So it's just gotten harder as a mid-amateur. It's gotten harder as someone who doesn't have that experience in college just to pick it up and use their, competitive edge to try to compete. It's just harder and harder to do. And that's why you're seeing some of these kids break 60 and shoot these incredible scores. It's nuts. And Patrick, on the other hand, I remember playing with him in Metacomet a bunch of times with the cross-handed. That kid can chip putt and hit his scoring irons better than anybody around. So if you can keep that up, there's no telling what he can do. But hopefully he gets to play in some more state stuff. I guess that'd be nice to see him do and not give that up to finish top 30 in some national event that doesn't really teach him much in terms of winning or closing or things like that, which I think is still important to the game.
Absolutely. And Patrick's actually coming back here next week. He's playing in the Northeast, which is fun, which is nice. This week he's actually playing because I try to keep track of all these kids all over the place. Patrick, Davis, Andrew O'Leary, whoever else.
Yeah.
Christopher and Cora over at URI, whoever else, I try to track them as best I can. And he's actually playing in Pennsylvania at some
Hannah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amateur, and he was tied for 37th after the first round of the lead. He was like 2 over, and the lead is like 4 under.
It's a great course over there in Johnstown. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he's doing today. I have to check the scoring, but he's coming back here next week, and then it will be, as a fan of the game and as someone that covers it, it will be fun to see these kids come back and play in the RA Amateur because Andrew O'Leary won it 2 years ago, played in it last year and lost to Jamie in a great match. I don't think he's in the field this year. Davis Chatfield won it a bunch of years ago. He just made that incredible run at the U.S. Four-Ball, the semifinal. So I think as a fan, and like you said, maybe some of the other players will enjoy it because these kids are just so good and they hit the ball so far. But as a fan, I think it's fun to see these kids come back and play consistently. And I didn't ever realize, I was saying this to Bobby, I never realized that it's because of the amateur rankings and stuff. I just figured they had like better things to do. And maybe they do. That could be part of it as well. But so it's been fascinating to learn about this, and I'm trying to ask different people their opinions on it, and maybe do like a story on it. It's been fascinating to learn from me about this whole
Yeah.
thing.
So I think it's rare that we have this many players that go to big time programs or schools. Like we have Oklahoma, like that's a big deal for Rhode Island.
Yep.
That doesn't happen every year or every decade at least, right? And we have people they go to Notre Dame.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then, I mean, those are big deals.
And Will Dixon, we forgot about him. Will Dixon over at Georgia.
Oh yeah, he went to Georgia Tech. I mean, that's a huge deal. Like when Faxon went to Furman. Right?
Yeah.
I don't even know where Brett Quigley went, but well, there aren't too many players, especially ones that are in the pro ranks even, that went to big time programs. It's almost impossible to get recruited to go to those big time programs coming from a small state, a cold weather state, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy to see that happening now, which is cool, but it kind of does stink though that they're giving up, their local stuff to play in some of those national things. But the world ranking is only relevant to get into events, right? So for example, as a mid amateur, if you're top, I don't know what it was. I think if you're top like 300 or something like that, or top 400 in the world rankings, like you get a free exemption. That is the only time it's relevant to have a high world ranking. I'm still going to get into the state amateur if I've won in the last 10 years, right? I don't have to qualify just because of my world ranking. And if I want to get into the Northeast amateur, if my resume says I belong there, there's a chances I could get in. My world ranking doesn't dictate that, right? So it's the world ranking isn't the end all be all. It only means something if you're in the top 50 because you get an exemption into say the US amateur, and you're most likely going to get into the top 5 amateur tournaments in the country. But outside of that, it's just not going to really help you all that much. At least I never noticed it anyway. It never really came up in conversation. I never put it on my resume when I applied for golf tournaments. Chances are these people are going to be emailing you to get you to go play in their event if they want to, or if they think you're good enough. They're not going to be like, hey, your world ranking's great this week versus last week because you top 20 last week or something. Come play. Probably already committed 6 months ago. So it would be a shame if they did skip the local stuff altogether for that reason, but it doesn't really come to that because you're seeing that in all sorts of sports. And hopefully it doesn't come to that, that'd be sad.
Yeah, absolutely. It's too bad. I mean, thankfully these kids are all coming here for the Northeast amateur, so people get a chance to see them. But I think it'd be great for the state game to have these kids, play consistently. And I don't know what the answer is, or if there's anything that the RIA can do, or if it's out of their control. But
it's strength of field. So if you have a high quality field, you get a decent rating, but that's about it. So how do you expect to learn how to win if your benchmark is the top 25, right? It's just not going to happen. So I think it's going to hurt development over the time. And I think it's just going to, the players are going to get lost in the shuffle more often than not because they're not really making any noise with top 25s across the board just to get a marginal world ranking.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating topic, like I said, that I'm admittedly trying to learn more about, and I didn't know much about prior to be honest, talking to Jamie Lukowitz, because he kind of explained it to me on the air. So I'm trying to learn more about it. It's a fascinating discussion, just in general, and a discussion I think that should be had more often amongst the amateurs, with Riga or the USPA or the Northeast amateur people, or whoever can do it.
Like that's one of the reasons why I don't try for the US football anymore. Like I did it the first year with Bobby, and it was a great experience. We played the Olympic Club, fantastic golf course. Mm-hmm. Once you're out there, you realize that there's no points for the event, right? There's no strength of field. There's none of that stuff because it's a team event.
Right.
So it's fun to play in, and it's great to cross off your bucket list, but it's not like a big deal in my view. You're playing against buddies that you live near, right, and partnering with. So it's not like this is some, whatever that tournament is on the PGA Tour at New Orleans, where these players are, for millions of dollars or something like that. I mean, the only reason why you would play in the four balls is for fun, because it's just like you would at your club, right, or with your buddies.
Right.
World ranking involved in it, and you can't make it that way because there's no way to handicap it with all the different teams, right?
Absolutely.
The public links, the reason why they probably gave that out was because a lot of players can't play in it. So how do you handicap the field with that as well, right?
Mhm.
So, even it's just hard with the world ranking, especially as a mid amateur, and even as a junior golfer, it's hard unless you're from Florida or from California. So I really wouldn't think it'd be that big of a deal.
Absolutely. Totally fascinating discussion. All right, you got to get to practice. So let me get you out of here on this. I've been asking everybody else this. You can answer it in a fun way or a serious way, whatever you want to do. But going into the RA Amateur in a couple weeks, July 12th to the 17th at Kirkbride, the favorite is who? You can say yourself. It's okay.
Great question. Great question. If Patrick comes back and he's playing well, it's hard to believe that he wouldn't be the favorite, given that he's been playing year round. He's playing at a great program right now. He just came out of the national championship. It'd be hard to play against him and think that you had a great chance to win without your A game. So if he plays well, I think he's definitely something to watch. You had mentioned Max, and as always, Bobby, Jamie, myself, Tyler. Depends on how each one of us is playing, but we'll see. And hopefully we get some good fireworks this year with a great course setup.
Absolutely. Listen, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. We'll let you get back to the driving range now. And good luck to you in the RA Amateur.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Had fun.
Absolutely.